Hey everybody, it's Tripl-L, and now let's talk about some Fairy Tail, the 100-year quest, chapter 4. Man, I am so ready to talk about this. And hey, we're back on the regular channel. Anyway, let's just get into it. Fairy Tail, let's talk about it. So this chapter has a distinction of being a chapter that I think is being relatively well received in the community. I'm seeing a lot of fans. A lot of longtime fans are talking about how they like the general feel of this chapter, and they're going into like the basic things like saying, oh yeah, like it doesn't have any of the friendship stuff, this is great. Or it's talking about, oh yeah man, like the adventure, this is so cool, we're seeing such a cool city. And the big issue, or the big reason that this kind of talk is happening, is because people point out that this is what Fairy Tail used to be in the past, or in the beginning it was about the adventure, or like there was a good portion of adventure in it. And when we come into chapter 4, like really you read it and it's hard not to be just kind of like entertained by it. I think the idea of a city where everyone's actually a fish and they turn into fish over the course of the night, I think that's a pretty neat idea, and seeing the cast kind of just swim around with the fish is also just a fun thought, right? In terms of a pleasant image, I think it does really well, and like there is a lot that you could say about this place in this new continent. What was it called? It was, I have to find that. I have to find the name again. I think it was Elmina. Yeah, Elmina. And someone pointed out that Elmina means port in Arabic. So that's pretty cool, right? But anyway, in Elmina, everyone is fish, and they are super welcoming to outsiders. I think that's the biggest thing here. The fact that they are welcoming to outsiders. Because there's like a few problems going into 100 Years Quest that I'm kind of like seeing. A few of the problems can be addressed. A few of the other problems are just small little detail things. Like when it comes to problems that can be addressed, you kind of have to deal with the whole Acnologia situation. Why didn't Acnologia go after these guys? We have enough clues that we can like say that Acnologia just flat out didn't know if these dragons actually existed. And then other things like this continent that they're on was called an unknown continent, yet there's clearly some amount of information trade going on between the continents. So in terms of like the setup and the premise for this continent, there's a bit of a problem there. It requires just a little bit more thinking, but they can all be solved. Anyway, the point is, we're talking a lot about the premise that brought us into this situation, and one of the things that I kind of want to go into for this chapter is just the fan reaction to this new continent, or just how people are dealing or handling this new kind of world building or exposition, right? I want to talk about that because I think it's kind of, I think sometimes the praise for it seems a little bit ridiculous. And I'll explain that. But before we get into that, there's one thing that I do want to point in there for the plot. With last week's chapter, there was a lot of speculation about whether or not the old man is actually telling the truth. The man that gave the mission, because you come into this chapter and you see the village of fish that want to protect the water dragon, and you gotta really start questioning whether or not the 5 dragons are actually that big of a deal. Are they actually that evil, or is there more to the story? Is this a situation where the old man just wants to prevent a possible nuclear situation, for instance, and he's trying to be preventative, but that preventative is like overlooking the fact that these dragons are otherwise peaceful? It's little things like this, right? Like some little things don't make sense with the overall mission, and when you see the town trying to defend the dragon, it's very interesting, and I'm very interested to see where this goes, because Fairy Tail has a habit of using Natsu to just demolish people who have good philosophical ground to stand on, but they will use Natsu just to like mow the way down and say that he's justifying it and using his friends as justification, or using Fairy Tail the guild as a justification. So I'm kind of apprehensive, because if anyone here is a danger, it's Natsu, because he's the person that gets used to just mow people down indiscriminately. But before that, or I mean after that, let's talk about just how people are interpreting the world building. So, you know, people's praise for this chapter is mostly going around, this is so cool, this is world building for the Fairy Tail world. And the thing is, it really does just go to show how much people enjoy new scenery or new ideas, right? Like, you think back to One Piece for a quick second. One Piece is the manga that's known for showing you all these cool different locations. Like right now, One Piece is doing a arc that is showing off a completely different art stuff for some of the backgrounds, and it looks amazing, it looks beautiful, people are excited. And I do wonder if this just traveling around and seeing how far an author's creativity can go, I do wonder if that actually does sway a lot of readers. And from the response that you get for the fairy tale chapter, it does seem to be the case. But there is something important that we should point out here. People are praising that Fairy Tail's doing the world building great, and I want to just clarify, I don't think this is good world building, right? I think this is just us going into a new scenery. And the reason that I'm saying that is just, you have to look at what happened here. Here's what we effectively got curtained off and put into a, let's say, an isolated room. This room is this new continent. Look at what happened on that continent, right? All of a sudden we have 6 dragons technically with the old man. 6 dragons who were not bothered by Acnologia. They were completely isolated from the situation. The Acnologia thing had nothing to do with it, even though Acnologia was a dragon that wanted to eliminate all other dragons. And I even have a few images here, like just showing him talking about that, right? We end up in this situation where we have an isolated room that no one has any idea what was going on. It's pretty much like a black box until you get inside of the black box. Within that, we get to see all these cool little sceneries, and now we walk into this town. Mind you, this town is a port. It establishes that there is a means of getting information out, or it establishes that these people are seafarers. Moreover, because you have the fish there and being hospitable to humans, that does say that they do get some amount of people coming through who aren't always the dragon killers. But anyway, the reason I say this isn't really good world building is because this doesn't really connect to the rest of the world. The only connection we really have with the plot elements of the 100 Year Quest is the fact that we know that Gildarts once departed on the 100 Years Quest. Like, remember, this continent was introduced as an unknown continent, even though there's tons of different mages going into this land, even though there's, from what it looks like, tons of different ways to access this land. There's a town there, for Pete's sake. Anyway, point is, this new continent doesn't feel connected to the rest of the fairy tale world. Heck, this little town, at the end of the day, is just going to be a gimmick. The town is a gimmick. It's just a setting. All that's been done here isn't world building. They just fleshed out a setting. To what degree is this place going to matter in the long run of things, right? To what degree is it going to matter? Like, is the whole dragon thing going to matter? Is this just going to be an isolated situation? It's been isolated for over 100 years. 100 years the world has gone on, dealt with its own problems, and these guys have just been hanging around here in the background the whole time, right? That's why I would make that distinction. This isn't a world building if you're not connecting to the rest of the world. This is just regular setting. This is just fleshing out a setting. And when you compare it to like One Piece, which is what Fairy Tail was once inspired by, One Piece's settings make the world. One Piece's settings are connected. One Piece's settings can be legitimately world building because you can go into one setting at one point, right? And then 900 chapters later, the events of that setting or the history of that setting is important to the history of the world. Like right now, One Piece cleared an arc which is based all around the connectivity of the world. That connectivity, Fairy Tail doesn't have it. So I understand, like, you know, the fans get excited because they're seeing all these new locales, but really, that's just kinda, it's so easy to do that when you pretty much isolate the story in its own self-contained bubble. That's easy. But that said, I don't want to take that away from anyone. I don't want to take the joy away from it. I just want to like point out, this is I think there's like someone set the bar kind of low for what makes this worthwhile. This is just a throwaway little thing. Fairy Tail's gonna go back to being Fairy Tail pretty soon because Fairy Tail's connectivity comes in with the characters. The settings don't really matter. The world itself doesn't really matter. All that matters is that Fairy Tail has to fight against whatever is in this new land that they're exploring. Alvarez just showed up out of nowhere. They were just somewhere that Fairy Tail was ultimately going to have to end up fighting the denizens of, right? I came out a bit more negative in this, but the big point of the thing is people are praising the world building here. I'm arguing this isn't actually world building. This is just a one-off setting that's not going to matter in the grand scheme of things. And the one that you can really compare it to is One Piece. The settings matter to a giant degree. It's not comparable. It's not even comparable at all. And that said, I want people to enjoy this because it is, at the end of the day, very entertaining. Like, again, it's a wonderful sight to just see the coolness of this underwater city. But I think the thing that really I really enjoyed, though, is the kindness of the fish in general. Like, it was just nice. It was a pleasant thing. Overall, I'm pretty excited. And of course, at the end of the chapter, we also have the continuation of the B plot with the girl that likes Natsu having a tail. All right, man. Yeah, whatever. I'm into it. That's cool. That's super cool. I want to see where that goes. But yeah, guys, that's it for me. Those are my thoughts. Let me know what you thought down below. And yeah, overall, I still think Fairy Tail 100 Year Quest is all right. Or, you know what? No. It's good. It's good. It's good by the standard of Fairy Tails. I really enjoy this. I don't really have that much of a big love for, like, early Fairy Tail. I think Fairy Tail was consistently an adventure all the way throughout. An adventure with a bunch of people who were friends. I think that's what Fairy Tail's managed to be the whole time through. But, yeah. Those are my thoughts. If you guys have any, like, things that you disagree with, just let me know down below. I struggle a little bit to structure this video, but yeah, guys, thanks for watching. Till next time, I hope you have an absolutely great day.